There's a quiet revolution unfolding, not in boardrooms, not in Congress, not even on the floors of the New York Stock Exchange. It's happening in vaults beneath the Kremlin, in underground bunkers in Beijing, in the central bank reserves of India, Turkey, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and dozens of nations you've never heard of. It's not digital, it's not speculative, it's not crypto, it's physical, solid, heavy, unbreakable. And over the past 5 years, more than $15 trillion worth of gold has quietly moved, shifted, accumulated, hoarded, and weaponized by the very nations that once bowed to the dollar. This isn't a rumor, it's not conspiracy, it's not theory, it's documented, it's tracked, it's verified by the World Gold Council, the IMF, the Bank for International Settlements, and central bank reports published in plain sight, if you know where to look. And yet, the American public, most don't even know what's happening. Why? Because the dollar's decline doesn't come with sirens. It doesn't crash with a headline. It doesn't collapse with a riot. It fades, slowly, silently, and with terrifying precision, like the tide pulling back from a shore that no longer remembers it ever belonged to the sea. And now, after 80 years of unquestioned dominance, the world is turning its back, not with anger, not with war, but with gold. Let me show you how this happened. Not in one moment, but in 7 stages. The same 7 stages that destroyed Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union. The same 7 stages that every empire that believed it was different ignored until it was too late. And right now, in 2025, the United States has passed stage 5. We're in stage 6. And stage 7 is no longer a question of if, it's a question of when. Let's begin at the beginning. In 1492, Columbus returned to Spain with gold from the Americas. Not a little, not a trickle, but a flood. By 1550, Spanish galleons were hauling 200 tons of silver per year. By 1600, that number had more than doubled. For the first time in history, a single nation controlled the global money supply. The Spanish real became the world's first true reserve currency. Every merchant in Europe, every banker in Antwerp, every prince in Constantinople wanted Spanish silver. But Spain didn't use that wealth to build factories, to innovate, to educate, to invest in productivity. They used it to wage wars. King Philip II spent half his empire's revenue on military campaigns against the Dutch, against the English, against the Ottomans, against Protestant rebels, against rebellions in Italy and the Americas. He borrowed from German and Italian bankers. He defaulted 4 times. He minted coins with 75% copper. He inflated his currency into worthlessness. And then, when the mines ran dry, the silver stopped flowing. Spain had become a parasite. It didn't produce. It consumed. It imported wine from France, silk from Italy, ships from Holland, all paid for with silver. When the silver stopped, the empire didn't just weaken, it evaporated. By 1650, Spain was bankrupt. By 1700, it was irrelevant. The lesson? Wealth without production is not power. It's a trap. Fast forward to 1914, Britain ruled the largest empire in human history. 1/4 of the planet's land. 400 million subjects. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Every trade contract, every bond, every central bank reserve was denominated in pounds. London was the financial capital of the world. And then came the First World War. Britain didn't win the war because it was stronger. It won because it borrowed. It borrowed from America. $40 billion in today's money. By 1918, Britain was the world's largest debtor. The creditor had become the debtor. It tried to hold on. In 1925, Winston Churchill, then Chancellor of the Exchequer, returned the pound to the gold standard at its pre-war parity. The problem? The British economy had collapsed. Productivity had fallen. Wages were stagnant. Exports were uncompetitive. The pound was overvalued by 10%. So what happened? British goods became too expensive. Factories closed. Unemployment soared. The Bank of England raised interest rates to defend the pound, crushing domestic industry. By 1931, the system broke. Britain abandoned the gold standard. The pound lost 25% of its value overnight. The empire didn't die in battle. It died in silence. Then came the Second World War. Another $120 billion in costs. More borrowing, more debt, more reliance on America. By 1945, Britain owed the United States $3.4 billion, equivalent to 250% of its GDP. It couldn't defend its colonies. It couldn't afford its navy. It couldn't feed its people. India was granted independence in 1947. Africa followed. The Middle East slipped away. By 1970, the British Empire was a museum. The pound? By 1980, it was worth 27 cents in 1940 dollars. The lesson? No empire survives when its currency becomes a burden instead of a bridge. Now, the Soviet Union. After World War II, the USSR emerged as the only other superpower. Nuclear parity, global influence, satellites in orbit. Ideological appeal across the global south. But beneath the tanks, the missiles, the propaganda, the economy was rotting. The Soviet Union spent 15-20% of its GDP on the military. The US spent 5%. It fought in Afghanistan for 10 years, propped up Cuba, armed Angola, backed Syria, supplied North Korea. Its factories produced shoddy tractors, broken radios, and rusting cars. Its farms couldn't feed its people. It imported grain from the United States, its ideological enemy. Its currency, the ruble, was worthless outside its borders. Soviet citizens hoarded dollars. They traded in jeans, cigarettes, and Western music. When oil prices collapsed in 1985, the Soviet treasury bled. Gold reserves vanished, foreign debt mounted. And then, in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. 1 year later, Eastern Europe was free. By December the 26th, 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. No invasion, no coup, no nuclear strike, just silence. A central bank with no money. A government that couldn't pay soldiers. A people who no longer believed. The lesson? A military empire without economic vitality is a house built on sand. 3 empires. 3 collapses. 1 pattern. Stage 1, military overextension. Stage 2, currency debasement stage. 3, debt spiral stage. 4, loss of productive capacity stage. 5, social decay stage. 6, loss of reserve currency status stage. 7, total collapse. And now, 2025, the United States has completed stages 1 through 5. We are in stage 6, and the world is replacing the dollar, not with another currency, but with gold. And not just any gold, $15 trillion worth. Let's break it down. Stage 1, military overextension. The U.S. has 750 military bases in 80 countries, troops deployed in 150 nations. Defense budget, $886 billion in 2025, more than the next 10 countries combined. We are committed to defending NATO from the Baltic to the Black Sea. We are committed to defending Taiwan. We are committed to containing China in the South China Sea. We are committed to fighting Iran in the Persian Gulf. We are committed to stabilizing Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia. We are engaged in 6 simultaneous theaters of conflict. And yet, our equipment is aging. Our recruitment is down. Our soldiers are overstretched. We have a 100,000-person shortfall in active duty forces. Our aircraft carriers are 30 years old. Our fighter jets are outdated. Our submarines are falling behind. And we can't respond to all threats at once. If China invades Taiwan, Russia attacks the Baltics, and Iran blocks the Strait of Hormuz, all in the same week. What do? We can't be everywhere. We are stretched thinner than Spain was in the 1580s, thinner than Britain was after 1918, thinner than the USSR was in 1988. We are not just overextended, we are overcommitted, and we are running out of options. Stage 2, currency debasement. In 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar was no longer backed by anything. It became pure fiat, a promise, a belief, a trust. And since then, the money supply has exploded. From 2000 to 2020, M2 money supply increased by 250%. From 2020 to 2025, $6 trillion printed. That's more than the entire U.S. federal budget for the year 2000. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. A dollar in 1971 bought what $50 buys today. We didn't mix copper into silver coins like Spain. We didn't abandon the gold standard like Britain. We did something worse. We replaced trust with algorithms. We replaced value with debt. We replaced sound money with infinite printing. And the world noticed. Every time the Fed prints, every time the Treasury issues bonds, every time inflation spikes, central banks around the world ask the same question. How long until the dollar is worthless? And they're answering with gold. Stage 3, debt spiral. The U.S. national debt is $36.2 trillion. That's 122% of GDP. Interest payments, $1.2 trillion in 2025. That's more than the entire defense budget, more than Medicare, more than education, more than infrastructure. We are spending $3.3 billion a day just to pay interest on past debt. We are borrowing $5 billion a day to pay the interest on money we borrowed yesterday. That's not a fiscal policy. That's a Ponzi scheme. Spain defaulted 4 times. Britain borrowed until it collapsed. The USSR ran out of gold. We are doing all 3. And we're doing it while pretending it's sustainable. The Congressional Budget Office says if current policies continue, interest payments will hit $2 trillion by 2030. That's 10% of GDP. That's unsustainable. That's the point of no return. And yet, Congress keeps spending. The White House keeps borrowing. The Fed keeps buying. And the world, it's watching. And it's preparing. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. In 1950, the U.S. produced 30% of the world's manufactured goods. Today, less than 15%. We don't make steel. We import it from China, from Brazil, from Turkey. We don't make semiconductors. We import them from Taiwan, from South Korea, from Japan. We don't make pharmaceuticals. We import active ingredients from China, from India. We don't even make our own batteries. We don't make our own rare earths. We don't make our own solar panels. We don't make our own wind turbines. We don't make our own electric vehicles. We design them. We finance them. We consume them. But we don't make them. Our trade deficit, $850 billion in 2024. That's $2.3 billion a day. We send out dollars, we get back goods, and we pretend that's normal. But Spain did the same thing. They imported wine, silk, weapons, ships, all paid for with silver. When the silver ran out, they had nothing to trade. We are doing the same. We are exporting dollars. We are importing everything else. And when the world stops accepting dollars, what do we have to offer? We have Apple. We have Netflix. We have Goldman Sachs. But we don't have steel. We don't have food. We don't have medicine. We don't have fuel. We are a financialized economy, a service economy, a consumption economy, not a production economy. And that's not sustainable. It's not just weakness. It's vulnerability. Stage 5, social decay. Trust in institutions at an all-time low. Trust in Congress, 11%. Trust in the Supreme Court, 25%. Trust in the media, 27%. Trust in the Federal Reserve, 33%. Crime, rising, homelessness, exploding, drug overdoses, over 100,000 deaths a year. Fertility rate, 1.62, well below replacement level. Life expectancy, declining for the third year in a row. The best and brightest, leaving. Over 1 million Americans moved abroad between 2020 and 2024. Many to Canada, to Portugal, to Singapore, to Dubai. They're not fleeing war. They're fleeing instability. They're fleeing a system that no longer rewards work, that no longer respects merit, that no longer promises a future. Political gridlock? Total. We haven't passed a full budget in over 1,000 days. We can't fix the border. We can't fix the schools. We can't fix the roads. We can't fix the debt. We can't even agree on what the problem is. And while we argue about culture wars, the real war is being fought in vaults half a world away. The world is watching. And it's deciding, we won't rely on this system anymore. Stage 6, loss of reserve currency status. This is where it gets real. This is the moment empires die. Not when they lose a war, not when they default, but when the world stops needing their currency. When no one wants to hold it, when no one wants to trade in it, when no one wants to be paid in it. That's stage 6, and it's happening now. Let me show you how. In 2020, central banks bought 272 tons of gold. In 2021, 450 tons. In 2022, 1,082 tons. In 2023, 137 tons. In 2024, 161 tons. In 2025, we're on track for 1,200 plus tons. That's over 5,000 tons in 5 years. At $2,500 per ounce, that's 15.7 trillion, not speculation, not hedge funds, not ETFs. This is central banks, the institutions that manage the world's money, the institutions that hold reserves, the institutions that back national wealth. They are not buying gold because they're scared. They are buying gold because they're strategic. They are buying it because they know the dollar is becoming a liability. They are buying it because they know their own citizens will demand stability. They are buying it because they know the next crisis will come. And when it does, they won't have dollars to fall back on. They will have gold. And they are preparing. China, Russia, India, Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Indonesia, Poland, Hungary, Iran, Venezuela, all buying, all accumulating, all quietly moving away from the dollar. China has been the largest buyer since 2019, but they don't report their full holdings. Officially, 2,270 tons. Unofficially, analysts believe 4,000, 6,000 tons. Russia, officially 2,300 tons. Unofficially, over 3,000 tons. And they've stopped buying U.S. treasuries entirely. Since 2022, Russia has held zero U.S. government debt. Zero. India, gold reserves up 150% since 2020. Turkey, gold reserves up 300%. Brazil, gold reserves up 120%. Saudi Arabia, officially buying gold. Unofficially, using gold-backed yuan for oil. In 2023, Saudi Arabia settled its first major oil deal with China in gold-backed yuan. No dollars, no euros, just gold as the hidden anchor. In 2024, India and Russia agreed to settle 40% of their trade in rupees, backed by gold held in Dubai. In 2025, BRICS Plus nations launched a new gold-backed trade settlement mechanism. It's called the Global Commodity Clearing System. It operates out of Shanghai, Dubai, and New Delhi. It allows countries to trade oil, wheat, metals, and minerals without using the dollar. Payments are settled in a basket: 40% gold, physical, allocated, 30% local currencies, won, rupee, rial, ruble, real, 20% special drawing rights, SDRs, 10% digital gold certificates. This is not a proposal. It's live, it's operational, it's growing, and it's bypassing the dollar. Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury market is starting to crack. Foreign ownership of U.S. Treasuries has fallen by $2. $1 trillion since 2020. Japan, down 30%. China, down 75%. The UK, down 40%. Who's buying now? The Federal Reserve. The Fed owns over $5 trillion in U.S. debt. It's the largest holder. That means the U.S. government is borrowing from itself, printing money to buy its own debt. That's not finance. That's fraud. And the world sees it. They see that the dollar is no longer a store of value. It's a tool of control. And tools can be turned off. Sanctions on Iran. Sanctions on Russia. Sanctions on Venezuela. Sanctions on Afghanistan. Sanctions on Belarus. Sanctions on North Korea. Each one sends the same message. If you hold dollars, you're vulnerable. If you trust the dollar, you are at risk. If you rely on the dollar, you are a hostage. And so the world is building a new architecture. One built on gold, one built on sovereignty, one built on trust, not in Washington, but in metal. This isn't a transition, it's a replacement, and it's happening in silence. Because no one wants to be the first to say it, but everyone is doing it. Stage 7, collapse. This is the final stage, the one no one talks about, because it's sudden, it's brutal, it's inevitable. It doesn't come with a war, it doesn't come with a riot, it comes with a treasury auction failure. Here's how it happens. The US government needs to roll over $1.2 trillion in debt this year. It holds an auction. Bidders, China, gone. Japan, holding back. Europe, buying less. The Fed, already at its limit. The private sector, too scared. The auction fails. Yields spike. The Fed steps in, prints more money, buys the bonds. Inflation surges. The dollar plunges. Markets panic. Foreign holders rush to sell. The dollar floods back home. The Fed can't print fast enough. Interest rates go to 8%, then 10%, then 15%. The national debt becomes unpayable. Social Security stops. Medicare stops. Defense cuts in half. The military can't pay its soldiers. The VA can't pay veterans. The IRS can't collect taxes. The government shuts down. The dollar becomes worthless. People start bartering. Gold becomes money. The BRIC system becomes the new global standard. The US becomes a regional power. The reserve currency becomes a relic. And the empire? Gone. This isn't science fiction. This is history. Spain went from global superpower to bankrupt state in 80 years. Britain went from ruling the world to needing an IMF bailout in 40. The USSR went from nuclear superpower to non-existent in 900 days. And all of them followed the same path. We are on that path. And we are moving faster. Because this time, the collapse isn't coming from within. It's coming from without. The world doesn't need to defeat us. It just needs to stop using us. And it's doing that. Right now, in silence, with gold. And here's the most terrifying part. We are not the first empire to think we were different. Spain thought their silver was eternal. Britain thought their empire was divine. The USSR thought their ideology was unstoppable. We think our technology is our shield. We think our innovation is our armor. We think the dollar is sacred. We think the Fed is infallible. We think the US is exceptional. But history doesn't care about exceptionalism. History cares about math. You cannot print infinite money without consequences. You cannot run infinite debt without collapse. You cannot lose your productive base without decline. You cannot weaponize your currency without losing its value. And you cannot ignore the silent movement of $15 trillion in gold without becoming the next footnote. This is not a prediction. This is a pattern. And patterns don't break. They repeat. Spain, Britain, USSR. And now, the United States. We are not approaching collapse. We are already inside it. We are in stage 6. And stage 7 is not a question of if. It's a question of how fast. Will it take 10 years? 5, 2? Maybe less. Because the world is no longer waiting. It's acting. And the dollar? It's being replaced, not by a new currency, but by the oldest one, gold. And it's happening in silence. Because no one wants to be the first to say it, but everyone is doing it. China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Turkey, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, all buying, all accumulating, all preparing. And the US, still printing, still spending, still pretending, still believing the rules don't apply to us. They did. They always do. And now the math is catching up. The $15 trillion in gold isn't just a hedge. It's a vote of no confidence, a vote for something real, something tangible, something that cannot be printed, something that cannot be frozen, something that cannot be hacked, something that has survived every empire, every war, every collapse, every lie, gold, and the world is choosing it, not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. And in a world of lies, honesty is the most dangerous thing of all. So what happens next? The Fed will keep printing. Congress will keep spending. The White House will keep blaming the other side. And the world, it will keep buying gold until the dollar is no longer the reserve currency, until the Treasury auction fails, until the U.S. can't pay its bills, until the soldiers don't get paid, until the pensions stop, until the hospitals close, until the streets fill with beggars, until the empire becomes a memory. And when that happens, when the dollar collapses, no one will say, I didn't see it coming, because they did. They saw it in the vaults, they saw it in the data, they saw it in the silence, and they acted while we slept, while we scrolled, while we watched Netflix, while we argued about politics, while we believed the system was permanent. They were building a new world, and we didn't even notice. This is how empires die, not with a bang, not with a war, not with a revolution, but with silence, with gold, and with $15 trillion in quiet, deliberate, unstoppable movement. The dollar didn't lose its power because China got stronger. It lost its power because the world stopped believing in it. And belief, it's the only thing that can't be printed. It can't be bought. It can't be forced. It can't be legislated. It can only be earned. And we lost it, quietly, slowly. And now it's too late. We are not the first. We won't be the last. But we are the next. And when the collapse comes, and it will come, you'll know why. Because we chose debt over production. We chose control over trust. We chose power over permanence. And we ignored the gold while the world was buying it. In silence, $15 trillion, and not one American noticed. If this opened your eyes to what's really happening beneath the surface, if you now understand that the dollar isn't just weakening, it's being replaced, then subscribe. Because when the next phase hits, the Treasury auction failure, the gold price surge to $3,500, the BRICS payment system going live, you'll want to know not just what happened, but why it was inevitable. The clues aren't in the headlines. They're in the vaults, and I'll be showing you exactly where to look.